In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the Nikon D800's left autofocus issue, a problem which affects a certain unknown percentage of bodies and manifests as an out-of-focus image when using the left outermost autofocus point to establish focus. This issue occurs mostly when using wide-angle, wide-aperture lenses, such as the 24G f1.4, but also the 14 to 24mm, as well as the new 28G f1.8. In this demonstration, I'll be using the 24G f1.4. I personally have used two D800 bodies so far, the first of which was purchased soon after they started to ship, and the second body which I just acquired a few weeks ago. The first older body I had did not have the left autofocus issue. Its autofocus was perfect, whereas both its left and right autofocus points matched perfectly. The second body, which I've just acquired, does have the issue. So based upon this and based upon other reports that I've read, the problem doesn't appear to be related to a specific manufacturing date or a specific manufacturing batch. Now, if you've already purchased your D800 or D800E, then I highly suggest you perform these experiments to see if your body is affected by the issue. Preferably before the return policy for your store runs out, but most importantly before your Nikon warranty expires. You don't want to find out after your warranty has run out that your body has the problem, because then you're probably going to have to pay to get it fixed. If you haven't already bought your D800 and you don't think you can get access to one of these lenses, then I highly suggest you hold off your purchase until either Nikon acknowledges the problem and either announces a fix or at the very least a recall, which should assure that you should be able to get your body fixed even after the warranty period expires. Now, the methodology I'm using for my demonstration is rather simple. I have the body mounted on a tripod. I'll be shooting with a 2-second exposure delay, which combines a mirror lockup and a timer release. This is to make sure there's nothing influencing the shot-to-shot sharpness of the photos other than the autofocus system itself. I'm also going to be using good enough lighting so that the autofocus system doesn't have to hunt for focus between photos. In my demonstration, the lighting was on the low side because I'm shooting at f1.4 with an ISO 100, and that produced a well-exposed photo at 1/50th of a shutter speed. You also want to use autofocus targets which have both horizontal and vertical detail, since the outer points are only sensitive to horizontal detail since they're not cross autofocus points. A good target to use is a Siemens star, since it has radial detail that extends outward, and also because it's easy to discern focus differences based upon how much of those radial lines are in focus from shot to shot. One thing I've done prior to this demonstration is to autofocus tune my body against my particular copy of the 24G lens. I'm skipping over that process for brevity in this video, but it's very important you establish precise autofocus tuning, because otherwise the results you get between the center and left and right autofocus points are not going to be consistent and reliable. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the process. The first thing you want to do is take a live view focus picture, which is going to be your reference standard for what the sharpness the lens should produce when it's perfectly focused. And so what you see here is I'm taking a live view picture. The delay is the exposure delay I have dialed in to produce maximum sharpness. And there you can see the Siemens star is perfectly sharp. Now what I'm doing is racking the focus on the lens and taking a picture via the center autofocus point. And I'm going to compare that, which is what you see now, that autofocus picture, with the previous picture, which is the live view picture. And you can see that the sharpness is nearly identical, showing and demonstrating that the autofocus tuning is correct, at least for the center autofocus point. And I like to do this at least 3 times on each autofocus point to make sure you're getting consistent and reproducible results. Because due to the variability of autofocus systems, sometimes a single shot is not going to be enough to confirm whether or not you've established the correct autofocus tuning and that the autofocus points are working reliably. So there you can see I've just taken that photo. I'm comparing it to the previous autofocus photo I've taken. So the center looks fine. So now I'm moving to the rightmost autofocus point. And you can see as I enter live view, you can see that that's now on that right chart of the Siemens star. And now I'll take another live view focused photo of that right point as my reference standard as to what the sharpness should be. You want to do that because the right edge of the lens, especially at f1.4, won't be as sharp as the center. So you want to make sure you're using the correct standard when you're evaluating the autofocus. So there you can see. Now I'm also zooming back on the center and the leftmost to show you how parallel these charts are to the camera, which is another thing you want to do. You don't want the charts to be at different distances from the sensor, otherwise the depth of field is going to be different across the points. And so there I've just racked focus on the lens and I've taken my first autofocus shot on the right autofocus sensor. And now I'm comparing it against that live view image that I just previously took, and you can see that the sharpness again is nearly identical, demonstrating that the autofocus acquisition was perfect. Now I'll rack the lens again, take another photograph. This is the second. I'll zoom in, and now that's the photo I just taken. This is the previous photo, and then this is the live view photo. There's the live view photo. Again, you can see that the sharpness is identical. And I'll do this again for 3 times, one last time, to make sure I'm getting consistent results. Zoom in, there's the photo I just took, which is a little bit off, but it's still within the realm of acceptable sharpness. And then comparing it to the other photos, including the live view, you can see they're all identical. Okay, now I'll move on to the left autofocus point, which I've just selected. I'm going to take my reference shot. It's important to check the left, especially against the right, because some lenses are decentered, so you want to make sure, again, you're comparing the correct sharpness standard between what you're taking in live view and what you're going to be taking through the normal autofocus. And there you can see what the sharpness is. And I'll go ahead and rack the lens and take my first autofocus shot using the left autofocus point. And now when you zoom in, you can see there's a difference here. It's out of focus. There's the live view image of the taken on the left side. There's the autofocus image, and you can definitely see that that image is out of focus. So let's go ahead and try the second time to make sure that wasn't a fluke. I've racked the focus, acquired autofocus. There I'm zooming in again, and you can see again it's out of focus. A little bit less out of focus than the first photo, but compared to the live view focused image, it's still considerably out of focus. And there again is the live view image. So let's try this one last time. There we're zooming in, and again we're out of focus. There's the third image I took, there's the second image, there's the first image autofocus, and there's the live view image, which is much sharper than the other 3 images that I've taken. So to demonstrate why it's out of focus, I'm going to show you I'm moving the autofocus tune from -5, which works for the other center and right points, to -15 to show you what the relative difference is. So there you can see there's the photo I've just taken with -15, and it's a little bit sharper than the one I took at -5, which is showing that the camera is front focusing my left autofocus point relative to the center and the right. Still out of focus though, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it up to the maximum -20, take a photograph, and now when you zoom in you can see it's much sharper than it was with all those other reference photos. There's the -20, now there's the -15, which is a little more out of focus, and there's the -5, which is much more out of focus. And so you can see I can dial in a specific autofocus tune on my body to produce a correctly focused image. But by doing that, I'm then going to make the other autofocus points out of spec because I've already calibrated those to -5. And so if I switch to -20 for all those points, then I'm going to get correct autofocus on the left point, but I'm going to get out of focus acquisition on the center and right autofocus points.